Hey, I'm Podcast Nate, and I'm inviting you to join the podcast revolution. I took my first podcast, The Sobriety Diaries, from launch to the top 3% globally in the first 90 days, and I've created a simple framework to help you achieve the same. Whether you're an entrepreneur looking for an additional stream of revenue or a creator expanding your platform, let's revolutionize your world one episode at a time. Welcome back to the podcast revolution. I am here with a colleague and a friend of mine, Suzanne Tregenza Moore. Suzanne, how are you this morning?
I'm great. I'm so glad to be with you.
We've been each flexible in our scheduling of this, so let me thank you for your flexibility. I'm excited to chat and get to know more about you today.
I'm excited too. I have to say, every time I get an opportunity to chat with you, I feel like it's an energizing conversation. So I'm psyched to see where it goes.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I try to keep the energy up. You know, you get the energy that you give off. So that's something that I keep in mind, not only when I'm recording, because I feel like that comes across through the airwaves, but in my personal life too. It's something I try to keep in mind.
Absolutely. Yeah, I do the same. I kind of feel like if I'm not having the energy to be on, right,
Yeah.
then maybe I should just be home and be quiet.
Right. And let me be off, but I'll be off like quietly and sort of
Yes.
regroup.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, in full transparency, Suzanne and I are working together on a project of mine, the companion to this podcast, the book, The Podcast Revolution. So that will be a focus of our conversation today, but certainly want to touch on the other great things that Suzanne's doing. But let's start with the book, The Podcast Revolution, and or other projects you've worked on or projects that perhaps our listeners are working on, and key points, some tips and tricks for launching a book that is in sort of companionship with another project, or using a book as an authority figure in, for entrepreneurs, for digital creators. How did you get involved in that? And we'll sort of transition to some of the key takeaways that listeners can have.
Absolutely. So I have this belief that that the go-getters of the world, right, are all all have it in their head that they would like to write a book someday.
So true.
And some of them want to write a book because they want to highlight their expertise in a certain area, but some of them want to write a book because they want to share the story of overcoming whatever it is they've overcome in order to get where they are. And both those books are amazing to put out in the world. And I think that when you become the person who puts that out in the world, it changes everyone else's view of you simply because they secretly have this desire to put out a book as well.
I have a secret.
I kind of fell into working with authors launching their books a number of years ago when I took a course on writing, launching, and making a book a bestseller. But then, of course, I didn't get my own book done. Instead, I started helping people launch theirs, which is I always sort of fall into the marketing of things. That's my natural bent. And so I get excited about things and about marketing them. And so I kind of helped one friend launch a book, and then another friend launch a book. And suddenly I found myself in this world where everyone was writing books and I was helping them launch them. And that became, well, I'm a marketing coach and marketing and strategy coach. That became like my special niche, right?
Yeah.
And what I've seen is there are people who really have established expertise and have a great business going, and then they add a book to that. And it's an authority figure book, and it's something that really helps them promote their thought leadership.
Mm.
Sometimes it goes flawlessly and it gets them on future stage or additional stages or gives them additional opportunities. And other times it makes their message get a little muddled and they kind of lose sight of things because then they feel as though their most important job is selling the book.
Yes.
Why don't you try selling a book to somebody?
And the problem with that, whether you have a booming business or not, is you don't make a lot of money selling a book, not the
Right.
book itself,
Right.
right? And so I always want to encourage people to know what comes after the book, right? You may get someone to buy your book, but then you really need them to invest with you in a deeper, more meaningful way, and quite frankly, a more revenue producing way for
Right.
you,
Yeah.
because nobody that I know is selling nonfiction books and paying the mortgage with it.
Right. Yeah, it's like what should the book lead to? What else can I offer you? It's sort of
Right.
like the hot off the presses, newspaper. But where are we taking the consumer?
Right, right. And so I think that if your listeners are out there and they have that secret desire to write a
Hmm.
book, my suggestion to them is think about what comes after the book, because the book is a beautiful thing. And whether it is a survival story or a success story, or whether it is a step by step, this is how you become an expert at, or this is how you do this, um, it should be leading people to you as a resource for something larger.
Hey, want to start a podcast? Spotify has a platform that allows you to create one so easily you won't believe it. And the best part, it's totally free. It's called Spotify for Podcasters, and here's how it works. Spotify for Podcasters allows you to record, edit, and distribute your episodes right from your phone or computer. You can also add songs from Spotify's library, edit with cool transitions, and then hear your show on all the big networks, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and more. You can also earn money through ads and subscriptions. And once again, for those in the back, it's completely free with no catch. Download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to spotify.com/podcasters to get started today. You said something interesting about the path to it, or marketing the book as a deeper meaning, or a way that myself or the person got there. Because when you and I were discussing sort of the mission or the statement about the book, I was
Mhm.
very analytical in the ideas that I came up with, and you were like, let's talk more about sort of the path or the meaning behind what you want the book or people to perceive about the book, which was
Right.
interesting, and I had to kind of rethink my thoughts about it.
Yeah. So as much as I'm the marketing geek, right? Um, and I'm always thinking about the angle of something, and it's the WYSIWYG, what's in it for them,
Right.
right? We were talking about encouraging people to help you launch your book.
Right.
And I think that when you are going to an audience and you're saying, will you help me with something? It's really important to communicate to them why it's important for you to share it, and not make them feel like you're just trying to get them to help you make a buck, right? I mean, we all want to make money. Making money is important. It's good. It's all the positive things,
Right.
right? But we get into this mindset when we're talking about something for our business that we have to sell that item. But in reality, sometimes we're selling the idea, and sometimes we're doing that in a way that is bringing people along with us, getting them to see why this is so meaningful to us. Um, and that's actually one of the reasons that I love working with new authors. I say warming up their audience on social media to their
Mm.
books, because I don't want them on social media, for 6 months while they're writing a book saying, be ready to buy my book, be ready
Yeah.
to buy my book.
Coming soon,
What,
coming soon.
right, exactly, yeah.
Yes, coming soon.
What I want them to do is to share the experience of writing the book, to share why they're writing the book, to share what they think the book is going to mean for the people who read it. Because that is where people engage, right? People engage when they are emotionally connected to a situation, not just because they can learn or make money. Although those things are great.
Those are perks of any situation, I think. But yeah, that's a good point. Anything that's like behind the scenes or something that you're privy to, maybe that you feel like you've got some insider information, I think is always exciting. Some of my favorite social media is like behind the scenes or recorded from a different perspective, and I think that's important.
Yes, I agree. And I think it allows those of us who are voyeurs
Yeah.
to engage. I also think, if your audience is entrepreneurs, I believe that people go into entrepreneurship because they are lifelong learners, because they absolutely love learning on some level, and they are constantly interested in how this new thing is done and how they can better do something, or maybe just an entirely new business, right?
Right.
I just, that's why there are so many serial entrepreneurs out there.
It's so true.
I'm a slightly dishonorable entrepreneur.
So let's sort of transition into then the launch plan or ideas for launch. I think, with most things, when you initially launch something, it's important to have traction right away and to get this sort of immediate attention behind things. So what are some tactics that you use? I know Amazon is a big one and sort of trending on some of their seller lists. So what are some tips and tricks, maybe without giving away, everything that you use with some of your launch partners?
Number one, I think that it's really important to harness the energy that you have with folks that already believe in you and think you're fantastic. And so I always encourage my clients to go to those people who love that they're writing. First, tell people they're writing the book, right? And share about it and share the little bits along the way of the experience, because as we were saying, people love that, voyeuristic opportunity. And then don't be afraid to ask people to help you. I can't tell you the number of clients I've had that have said, well, if I'm going to ask people to share about my book on my launch day, what do I give them? And I think to myself, will you give them the opportunity to do something nice for someone?
You'd be so surprised what people are willing to help you with.
Absolutely. Especially when they understand what it means to you and not that you're just trying to make a buck.
Right.
Right. And so don't be afraid to ask people for some help, and don't assume that you know who is and is not going to be willing to help.
Great point.
Because when I did my own book, I was surprised. I was surprised at the people who said yes. And in a couple cases, I was surprised at the people who said no. Right. And so just jump in and ask. It's like everything else that you want. The prize is on the other side of your comfort zone.
Right.
Right. So I encourage people to work with a team. I encourage people to plan. I know people who have spent more than a year, well more than a year, writing a book, and then have plunked it out on Amazon with no fanfare, no excitement, no anything. And I've thought, what a lost opportunity. I mean, you've worked your heart and soul into writing this manuscript, give it what it deserves, which is a party. I mean,
Exactly. Yes.
I am all about a party.
A
Um,
quinceanera, something, a
yeah,
coming out.
something. Yes, give it a coming out party. It
Right.
deserves it.
Today's episode of the Podcast Revolution is brought to you in part by StreamYard. StreamYard has everything you need to create a branded experience with your content. Logos, brand colors, music, overlays, cool transitions, and more. Say goodbye to willy-nilly Wi-Fi connections. StreamYard uses live local recordings, so no matter what kind of connection you or your guest has, you're getting studio quality audio and video for your podcast recording. Click the link in today's show notes for $10 off any package when you subscribe to StreamYard today.
I don't help people write books. I always want to clarify that, because people say, oh, you help people launch books. They think I do the whole thing. No. I do just the launch. But what I will say is, I think one of the biggest mistakes people make is they write a book and they don't get an editor. They don't get a developmental editor. Really, these are important things.
So important.
And you're putting a book out that's going to it's going to be a representation of you for the rest of your life and possibly beyond.
Right.
Do it right. Do it right. It's worth the investment to do it right. So, yeah, I'm a huge believer in giving your book a party, doing it right. And usually when you do that and do it in the right way, you can have a tremendous, you can spark some tremendous momentum for everything else you want to achieve with the book.
That's a great point. It's a great segue. Suzanne, you have your own podcast, All Things
I do.
Authorpreneur, which so clever.
Thank you.
First of all, where did that come from? Did it come to you one night in a dream? Like, that's one of those, like, oh, yes, I got the title or the sort of trademark that makes so much sense.
So I cannot take credit for the word authorpreneur. It was out there. Okay. It was out there. I don't know where it came from. What I can say is, for a while, I had a podcast years ago and then didn't continue with it. I love talking about all the things that authorpreneurs and entrepreneurs do.
That's where it starts from.
Right. And so I wanted to call it All Things Entrepreneur or All Things Entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
And then as I was getting prepared to launch the podcast, I realized that I had really started to refocus my business on working with nonfiction authors. And so I thought, well, rather than taking that step back from narrowing my focus, let's keep the focus on authorpreneurs, because that's my trajectory forward. And it certainly has been. My podcast is just about a year old, and I am only increasing my work with nonfiction authors. So it was a good choice for me, and I did trademark it. So yeah, feels good.
So clever.
The first thing I've trademarked in my business. I feel like a big girl.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is legit. Strategy, marketing, and mindset. And I think mindset is so important in entrepreneurship and these large projects that people take on. And I think it can be forgotten sometimes with this, it's more than tasks and more than projects that are being completed. It truly is a mindset. So how do you help to incorporate that within the podcast and with the guests that you talk to?
The truth is that I don't think I can even have an entrepreneurial conversation that doesn't touch mindset in some way. Because everything we do, every single thing, every email we send, every time we pick up a phone, there's mindset, there's stuff in our brain connected to that. And, we've got the little one person or one creature on our shoulder telling, saying negative things in our head. And we need the other shoulder telling us the positive stuff, right? Telling us to blow through and not to listen to that other guy. right?
Yes.
And so every conversation I have, whether we directly address it as mindset or not, it's all about mindset.
So true.
Every single one. And I think especially with authors, I mean, the first thing you think is, who the heck's going to read this thing?
Yeah.
Right? I've
Yeah.
spent all this time, effort, energy writing all these thoughts from my head. Who the heck wants to look at it?
Right. That
Who's going
imposter
to bother?
syndrome too.
Totally.
Oh, it's
Imposter
real.
syndrome. Yeah, it is so real.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think every one of the conversations touches on it, and sometimes very directly. But even when it's not direct, it's there.
Again, that's All Things Authorpreneur, available, I'm sure, wherever you get your podcasts. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes.
Amazing. Suzanne, tell us where we can find you online, or if individuals are preparing to launch a book or are inspired to reach out and work with you otherwise.
Absolutely. Well, my website is suzannetmoore.com. And I welcome anyone to drop by. They can always set up an appointment to chat with me about what I do. And, you know, I'm not a hard sell. So I'm very conversational.
Yeah.
And then I tend to play online on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. So there are links to those channels on my website, and I am happy to connect with people and, you know, just see what they're up to and how I can support them.
Awesome. And I will link everything in today's show notes. Again, Suzanne Tregenza Moore, thank you personally for your input and impact in my own journey. And I look forward to collaborating in the future. Thanks again, my friend.
Likewise. And thank you. Have a great day.
You too. Thank you so much, friends, for downloading today's episode. Stay tuned every Tuesday for new episodes highlighting the hottest equipment, production and editing tips, launching your show, pitching to sponsors, so much more. Everything you need that's involved in launching and monetizing a successful podcast. Subscribe to the Podcast Revolution now so you never miss an upload. Again, every Tuesday. Hit that follow button on Instagram at PodcastNate to submit your own questions on podcasting and to catch the latest updates on the show. Remember, friends, it's never too late to find your voice and use it. And let's revolutionize your world one episode at a time. Bye for now, friends.